How's everybody doing? Awesome, thank you. Word of caution, I do have a really shitty internet, so it's not my fault if everything craps out and if things are slow. Yeah, I mean, there was no Wi-Fi here, so I'm just staring to my phone. I'm going to talk about a project that I've been working on for the past 8 years, which is Linear, obviously. Who knows what Linear is? Cool. Oh, I should ask who doesn't know what Linear is. A few people. Cool. Linear is a project management system for software companies. If you know Jira, no, okay. So then you don't need it. Then you don't need it. You don't need to care. It's all fine. It's the modern project management system, used by effectively most startups these days. Like we do look at, like, for example, YC companies when they come out of YC. I think the latest figure was like 65% of all these companies are using Linear when they come out. Series ABC companies, like, we're crossing over 50% over in the US already. So it's become sort of the standard of building software. And the theme for today was accelerating shipping and getting some insight into how to build great product. What I thought of going through is just like all of AI at Linear. Like, what have we done, and how did we get to insight, and what did we do wrong? Where did we do have some pitfalls, and how we came to the sort of features that we have today in the application. Hopefully that gives you a bit of inspiration. Hopefully it gives you a bit of sort of insight into what not to do, what to do, what to look out for. If you have any questions, just shout them out loud. Like, let's make this an interactive session. I'm happy to sort of jump into details. I won't be showing too much code, because most of this stuff I think is relatively trivial. It's interesting that, like, AI was so complicated, and once AI was invented, it seems that it's pretty simple in the end. Even creating new LLMs is not sort of something that is very hard anymore, which is kind of mind-blowing to me. It obviously costs a lot of money to create LLMs, but if you then go into sort of the agentic space, it's all pretty simple. You gather some context, you hand it to the LLM, you get something back. And to me, the most important aspect of building stuff with AI is to figure out, like, what context to feed and what questions to ask, and how to create the user experience out of it. So to start off, I can't show it anymore. We used to have what we called a copilot in Linear 4 years ago. Like, just when ChatGPT-3 came out, we had effectively, a copilot that looks similar to the AI that we have today in here. Let me just increase this a bit. Looks ugly, but at least you'll be able to see, and then actually turn into light mode. So maybe that's more visible. We used to have this sort of side panel where you could, start a chat with a client. And GPT-3, if you ever used it, wasn't really that great. So we tried all kinds of things to make it better. RAG was coming, and we implemented ourselves initially. Like, we picked the vector database in order to give it some sort of content from the Linear code base. And we probably spent like 4 or 5 months trying to make it good. And in the end, we sort of had a product that, like, answered your questions 70% of the time very nicely. It was really valuable, but 30% of the time was just utter crap, unusable. And that's not a good experience. And we were like, we can't ship this, so let's wait. And wait a while for LLMs to get better, and maybe we can revisit this functionality. We learned other things from this. Like, we wanted to ship something with AI. And we sort of came to this conclusion of, like, we want to ship AI when it's actually useful to the user. And that's sort of was the mentality with the Copilot as well. Like, it wasn't really useful to the user, so we didn't ship it. What was useful, and the first thing that we shipped with AI back, like, I think 4 years ago, even 3.5 years ago, was documentation search. Again, it's gone from the application, it's no longer there, but it used to be a side panel that you could bring up, and you could ask questions like, oh, how do I create cycles? Or how do I send an issue to a different team? Whatever your question was, we had documentation vectorized in our vector database, and we would have an LLM that could then figure out, like, what the result should be, and point you to the right documentation points, which was great back in the day. We spent probably like 2 months building that feature. And literally the week we launched it, somebody came out with a sort of generic solution for this kind of problem, where you could just, like, put some servers up and running and then just host your data in there and then ask some questions on it. So we're like, this feels kind of silly to be sort of spending weeks and weeks of work on a thing that changes so quickly. And I think that's still true today. The biggest thing that annoys me about AI is how quickly it changes and how quickly sort of anything that you've worked on becomes obsolete. So you might be working on something like that feels very, very nice and very good, and like you spend a lot of time on it, and the moment you ship it, like there's some generic solution out there, or a new LLM capability or LLM model that just does it for you automatically. So that was sort of the second insight that we had. Let's wait for things to be maybe a bit more stable, where we can ship things easier, and let's always sort of have this mentality that like things will progress. There will be exponential growth. Anything that we ship, we need to make extensible, and we need to build in a way where we think sort of AI is going in the future. So those were sort of the first things that we tried out with AI, which utterly failed. The chatbot is no longer in the product. The documentation search is no longer in the product. But then we started finding some interesting things, and it was sort of a weird way of how we bounced into the first functionality that we implemented with AI that became effectively the basis for all of our AI functionality in Linear today. And I'm going to walk through sort of all the functionalities that we have with AI in Linear if you haven't used it yet, so you'll see. But I'll slowly get there. So the one thing that we had was a nice Slack integration between Slack and Linear, where like if your team is not on Linear, because maybe just your engineering team is, but you have support folks in there, or you want to have some sort of IT request outside of Linear, we built this thing called asks, Linear asks, where anybody in Slack could ask Linear effectively give it a task, and it would create a ticket on the Linear side. And then those channels would be synced. So then somebody could work on the ticket in Linear, then complete it, and your Slack thread would sort of get a notion of the completion of that ticket. So you, as a user who didn't have access to Linear, would still be able to know when something got completed. And that was super useful for enterprises. We used it a lot. There was this one thing that always annoyed us. Like whenever you created a new ask, you had to put in the title and then the description of like what you're asking for. And we were like, looking at our own data that we used, like people usually just almost put the same data into the title and into the description. And we're like, this is kind of wasteful. So let's try to change it. Let's have the description be filled out by the user, and then we auto-generate the title. Because we knew that LLMs were pretty good at just summarizing things, and it was very inexpensive. And for some reason, people loved that. Like they didn't expect to see that, where they wrote a description, a long description of like, I need a new MacBook Pro and I need this kind of memory, for that title to be generated to be a very summarized version, and it would become the issue title in Linear. So that was the sort of first time we felt that we're onto something with sort of the Slack integration and Linear. So we started doubling down on it. And the first thing that we shipped, which was sort of a bit agentic, and I think that was maybe 2 years ago, was a full-fledged integration with Slack, where you could have a pretty, in the beginning, it was a pretty silly agent that could create issues for you based on the conversation that you have in Slack. And we still have that today. Obviously, the agent has become much more knowledgeable. But say you had and let's just have a conversation about whatever. I'm on Slack with my team chatting about our sidebar that we have. And looking at this on a light screen, I feel that there's not enough contrast on that sidebar on the hovers. So I'm going to have this conversation saying, a sidebar has a bit of a problem with contrast, right? And then somebody might reply, yeah, it really is bad. And then somebody says, I wish when you select an item, it was really red. Cool. So we used to have these conversations, a lot in Slack, and then at some point, somebody gets the hint of okay, this should be an issue, we want to work on this. and then we'll create the issue manually in Linear. Obviously, that's wasteful. Like, all the information is here. So what we did is we added a Linear persona into Slack, where we said Linear, and then you can effectively tell it what to do. And it has the entire context of the Slack conversation, and then some. Like, in the beginning, it was just a conversation. So you could say, like, oh, create an issue and assign it to me. It would know who I am. In the private team, I don't want to, like, we're running live. I don't want to send issues to the Linear production team. In the private team, in triage. So I want to have somebody to have a look at in there. So when I do that, and if the internet is working, then Linear will jump in and it starts thinking. It has gotten that request. It's being routed to the backend, and all the context from that conversation has been passed in. And then it has obviously more information about, like, the space. It has access to teams. It has access to issues, to projects, to initiatives. In the end, we ended up, implementing everything effectively. All the data that we have in Linear in there, and it comes back with a reply saying, "Oh, created issue PRI 267. I already know from this that it's in the correct team. And if I open it up in Linear, very slow internet. Linear is usually very, very fast. So it has created an issue in triage, assign it to me, improve contrast on selected sidebar. The sidebar has poor contrast, selected items appear clearly red. Should appear clearly red. So it took everything, and it can really go through a lot of conversation and then create a very substantial issue out of it. It also links to the thread, so if you want to look at sort of what happens, you can jump to Slack and see the entire thread in there. So this, yeah, go ahead.
What if the conversation is very complex and also there's disagreement? And what if someone has seniority and someone does not?
Yeah, seniority would be hard for the agent to fathom. They would know effectively how long people have been in the company, how much code they've shipped. So that might be seniority. If like, it would probably ask. It would say, I've identified that you don't have consensus on these things. Like, what should I do? And it would then have a conversation in Slack, continue that conversation until it's resolved, and it would create the issue. So that was the first thing that we shipped, and it's probably still the most used feature that we have in Linear, and people just love it because it's such a time saver. Linear, create an issue, and it's solved. You don't have to do anything else. It will do these complicated things for you. The second thing which was sort of the first big implementation that was costly for us because it required a lot of sort of agentic power, was what you see with triage intelligence here. So if you're not familiar with what triage is, triage in Linear is effectively an inbox where new issues go into that somebody needs to look at. Like, from intercom, from your bug reporters, you just got an influx of issues, and nobody knows if they're in what order they should be fixed. And we have a person that's responsible for going through that inbox and then figuring out who should be working on these things and how critical these problems are. And we're again, we don't really want human work to go into this kind of job because agents are pretty good at this. So we built triage intelligence, which you can enable it on a business plan, and it will look through every single issue that comes into your triage, and it will do a really pretty sort of deep code search and search throughout the entire code base and through all the issues and projects, and then suggest you next steps to do. It takes a while to compute, but again, you're not looking at triage issues immediately. It takes maybe 5 minutes to compute all the dependencies. So if you go and look at, we jump into, let me just close the favorites here. This is our actual triage inbox. So you see a bit of our stuff that we have in here. So if you jump in here, this is what triage intelligence comes up with. It has a suggestion that Leipard, Lucas, should be working on this. And here's the second thing that we've done. Whenever there's suggestions from an agent, we also want to tell you why, because you don't sort of trust the agent to do the right thing. So at least not today. Maybe in 2 years, nobody cares. But at least today, like we want some confirmation, like why this was the correct choice. So for example, for Leipert, we says, well, why this assignee was suggested. Owner of the robust GitHub integration project that covers GitHub sync task and Datadog alerts. He has done these kinds of issues. He's listed at the primary owners for GitHub integration. So definitely he's the correct owner for this. We have suggested labels in here. Why this label was suggested? Well, it's failing. It's a GitHub integration that we need to figure out. And then it found all the related issues to here. So it can give you some context and find duplicates as well. Like if you get multiple bug reports from the same thing, Triage Intelligence will just figure it out and fix it. And again, this was sort of the second thing that we shipped that was super useful for people that have a triage box. And we sort of want to take this further. Like we want to make it so that sort of the agent can take action on these things and maybe drive them even to completion. So just last Thursday, we shipped a way where you can set up integrations where an agent will look at these things and be like, if I think I can fix it, I will just delegate it to myself, which will create a coding session, which we announced last Thursday as well, where it will just do a coding sweep of the problem, try to do a fix and put up a PR, assign that to the correct person, which would be, for example, Lucas in this case. There you go.
Quick question about that process. So you have an agent go and pick up a task, it will self-assign and execute. How is Linear, or how does the industry in general solve the self-QA problem? How are you evaluating what the agent performed or done? Like with the whole PR process, I think it's great, but it was like it was made at a time when the humans were still developing. So now with all these agents being able to open PRs,
right.
How are you like speeding up or catching up to the QA process?
Yeah, so a few things. We obviously we know whether an agent was successful in doing something based on whether its code was merged in the end. So that's the positive signal for us. If it wasn't merged, if it closed, we get a signal that this wasn't a good fix from the agent that tried to develop it. And over time, I think the success rate maybe is at 40% for the Linear agent. Like 40% of things get merged as is if a bug report comes in. And that has been increasing. Like just maybe half a year ago, it was like a 15%. We're now at 40%. I can see to getting to 70, 80%. And I've done some tasks where I just bulk create 20 issues where we wanted to do a very specific thing that was like easy to gate, and the agent just nails every single one of them. People who've been working in that code review it and be like, this is great, merge it in. So 20 issues created. Does that answer your question somehow?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So how has it been, so this process, right, I'm guessing in addition to making it available for Linear customers, you've been using it internally for your own.
Sure.
Have you been able to do some kind of learning so that the first time maybe it's needed to do a triage, it had to check, well, repository 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But the next time it knows this issue was more related to repository 3, so it goes directly there.
Yes.
Have you been able to do any of that?
We are working on memory for the agent. We had it ready, ready. We had something in there maybe a few months ago, but it didn't work perfectly. So we're still iterating over it. But yeah, the assumption is that over time, we will be able to, have the agent learn from sort of the interactions with the user. But there maybe again, we go back to the thing that we noticed 4 years ago. Things are changing so fast that I don't know if we need to build it. There might be even just the LLM providers might have a functionality where you can give it some knowledge and give it good intelligence on it.
Out of curiosity, how many repos do you have, just as a rough number, so that trying to estimate how long it takes to do that triage?
We have one repo. It's a mono repo. All of our code is in one. But we have clients that have hundreds and hundreds of repos. And obviously there's code search before that. So you need to be able to search these repositories, then identify those repositories, check it out, and actually verify that it's in there.
Sorry, and how do you solve the issue with the context? Obviously, a lot of the data is pulled in to get these super valuable things.
Yes. So we have a router, as it happens. So we've got this small model sitting in front, and it's always a model. Very small model that takes the query that comes in as like, what do I need in order to parse this? And it has a list of all the tools that we have available, or we've grouped them up into buckets effectively. Like, do you need code access? That's the most heavy model. Do you need access to your issues? Do you need access to your projects? Like, what do I need in order to fulfill this query? And then it will, usually it goes always to the same model. Like we can differentiate, we can swap it out, and we do whenever there's a new model, we evaluate whether it's more cost efficient or not. But the big unlock is from then assigning only the tools that are necessary for that query to the model. And therefore we can keep the context pretty small.
Yeah, I understand. Well, basically that's the model what Cloud Code is using when they have sub-agents.
Yeah.
You have a smart one, maybe with MCP tools, that
Sure.
you delegate and get back.
Yes, and even in the triage, like there's multiple sub-agents just working. Like there's this big agent who then asks from sub-agents like, I need some information. Like, can you find, are there related issues? Can you find like, the code in here? Can you figure out like who should be a designer? And then it compiles all the information together. So the sub-agents just get a very small slice of what is required.
Just one question on that is, in case you have all your skills on your project, all the different skills for the agent and so on, when the triage create this PR, would it use all this information that you have in your project?
Yes.
Or, yes. Okay.
Yes. So let me actually show you. So we have this issue, right? It's in triage. I'm like, let's say I'm on triage duty. I found something. Nice. It doesn't have any other information because we're in a private team, so it doesn't want to go outside of the private team. But simply what I can do here, if I can get the side panel to show, I can take me and a Sunshiny and I can simply say, I cannot. Okay, so Linear is not available here. Let me just move this issue to the playground team. Right, so there I will have access to a Linear agent. And simply just adding it to Linear agent will kick off a coding session with that agent. So it will wait for Linear, it'll spin up. So what we use is Modal on the back end. We spin up a virtual server, which is totally sandboxed. We put in the agent, we check out the code. All of that is cached, so it's fast. There's again internet connections. It should be much faster. It should spin up in like 5 seconds or so, and start coding. It will then produce a PR out of it that is attributed to me. So it's as if I wrote the code. It will assign it to me to be reviewed, and then I can sort of make modifications to it. I can get an agent to make further modifications. I can send it to somebody else and review the whole code in Linear as well. So I'm still waiting to be connected. What is going on? Do I have? Well, I've got 1 bar, so that might be it. Why it's not really working nicely. Anyways, what it will do, it'll just like tell you, like any coding agent, what it's doing, check out the code and do things in there. Did not respond. Yeah, nice. Let me give it a try again. No agent, archive session. This is where local first doesn't work anymore. You actually need, so there you go, setting up Linear app. So we can jump into that session and look what the agent is actually doing. So obviously the setup will take a bit of time, but it will then do the PR, it will submit the code, and we've hooked up sort of automatic builds on all the changes in here. So we actually see the output from within Linear. We can go into that pull request, open it up in the browser, and see what modifications is made. So I would hope that we would at least make the selected items clearly red in the sidebar when it's selected, when the job is done. So from here, this was actually the last thing that we shipped, so the coding agent. Before that, we did the cop-out that we got banged for, and I think everybody sort of doesn't appreciate that if you put in AI, you put in a chat box. And we put in a chat box. And people were like, everybody's putting a chat box into their product. And we're like, yeah, we want to do so much more. But you need to start somewhere. And in order for you to sort of start gaining some sort of intelligence into like what your users want, what they're using, whether this thing works. This is the fastest way. This is effectively the minimum viable product for an AI agent. Have it be able to ask or answer questions from the user. There's an interesting thing that I did just yesterday, for example, to give you an example of what it's capable of, is like we had this problem, maybe open it up in here, where I identified a problem where some of our task runners that sort of run tasks in the background, we're running out of memory, and we have this constant stream of out of memory operations. And I looked at our traces and like, well, there's this one database load that loads up 2 gigabytes of data from the database and then crashes, obviously, because that's pretty heavy. Like you shouldn't do that. So it's an unbounded database access. Obviously, because it crashes out of memory, we have no idea where it happens. It's somewhere in the processors or task runners, or there may be multiple culprits of those. And I was like, oh man, this is my week now, so I have to go through every single file and look at like, oh, where might we have unbounded database loads? In the end, I was like, well, we do have this agent, so let's give it a try. So I opened up the agent, find task with unbounded. Let's open this up. So start with saying like, can you find a task that might be any task that might be using a no, sorry, this was the wrong query. Let me go back. Unless task and not task, open most urgent, find, there you go. So this was this that I ran a few days ago. So I was like, yo, we have some problems with our messages in processors. These stem from unbounded data loading from the Postgres database. Can you check all processors and produce a list of the processors that load data without any bounds? Right. So very high level as I would talk to an engineer. And because like, the agent has access to all the issues, all the code, everything that, all the projects that we've been working on, all the people, it was able to sort of jump into the code base and, figure out, read through every single file. And it found these problems. High risk, right here, multiple activities and processors that had problems, medium risk and low risk. And I was like, well, okay, great, you found them. Just create issues out of them, and mark them as sub-issues of this one parent issue that I'm having, which was the one that I opened. In the description mentioned that like, these should be fixed and assign them to the correct owners who've been working on this code already. It did its thing, worked for 12 minutes, which I would have worked for, probably a few hours on this. And then it created all these issues, which was great. But like I wanted to help out those folks a bit. And I was like, in a separate thread, I was like, well, take all these issues and, assign them to an agent so that, when people come into those issues, they already have some, example of like, of a try of trying to fix these things. Yeah, here's the issue. Here's all the sub-issues that it created, all marked as bugs, assigned to separate people, and some of them have already landed. People have looked at the PR that the agent produced, and some are still under works. So this was a great example of like why you should start with chat interfaces, because like you can just unlock so much potential. I understand that people just hate chat interfaces, and there needs to be more. And that's sort of the next thing that we want to do. Like we want to take the agent from being this thing that you have to activate to something that is constantly there and prompts you. Has a look at like all the projects. It's like, oh, dude, hey, you should be looking at this here. These guys are slipping, like they're not shipping, or we've got too many bugs in this area. So we want to make the agent into a effectively, free product manager of sorts, where it can come to you. And the one thing I always wanted to do is let's just give it Twilio access so it can call people. Like if there's a problem that it just like calls back, hey, it's been 2 days, like this urgent issue still hasn't been fixed. And that will be great. And yeah, that pretty much well, one more thing that I could show you is, well, let's check into the coding session. Is it done in here? Well, it's still working. It's been working for a while. So maybe if I took, take some few questions, then I can show this at the end, if there are any.
So I definitely see a lot of value in this also when you have a big team, the distribution of tasks. Would you say that you can also get a lot of value if you're a small team of 2, 3, 4 person maximum, and there is only, let's say, one CTO? But do you think that you can use enough the agent to do most of the thing? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, totally. Well, yeah, sure. Like with 4 people, you sort of have the code base in your mind. Like you know what's up. So then it's not really useful. To us, like, you know, I don't know all the features that we even ship anymore for the longest time. And it's great to just be able to ask, like, have you shipped anything in this area? Or can you point me to the code? If you have a small team, like probably not. Like the unlock isn't there yet. But, you know, over time, yeah, for sure. Maybe the unlock comes from like, you know, you don't need to do support anymore. You can take all the bugs that people report and try to, you know, fix it automatically. That might be something. All right, so we've got a PR. It's also, you know, building a preview build of it, and we can open it up. And like, again, we don't have to leave Linear in order to review our code and ship it and land it. So I can look at the diff, and what it did looks correct. It identified the sidebar, it changed the color. Let's wait for the preview build to come in, and then I can actually show it to you live. We also, the next thing that we did is with AI, and this is the last thing that, you know, is still in beta, we haven't shipped it to everybody yet, is this guide for PRs. This is a silly PR, it doesn't really make much sense. But when we had diffs in here, I was like, well, how much static analysis can you do on diffs in order to figure out like what's the important parts and what are not? If this continues and there's no upper bound in how capable LLMs can be, or, you know, it's probably not LLMs, it's some other world model that will take ownership and make it even better. If exponential growth keeps on happening, there will be no engineers doing anything. Like there might be, for a certain time, sort of still tastemakers left that sort of ask of things. Like if you, and we've done this exercise a few times at Linear where we say like, well, assume exponential growth 5 years from now, how are we still relevant? Like what's our role in this world? And the outcome there is like, if you believe in that growth, is that you know, LLMs will do all the shipping. You will not look at a single line of code anymore. It won't be React, it won't be HTML, it will be, you know, C++ or even assembler. It will be a language that you don't comprehend anymore. It will ship in real time. You ask it to do something and you see the end result. And it's not like you ship something or you don't ship something. It just, you know, is updated live in reality. Most of our users, or the users in this world, will have sort of dynamic generated UI. You want something, you ask it, and you have, I don't know what device you have, maybe glasses that has a screen, and you'll just get the application that you wanted, like you route home or whatever. So that will be fully dynamic. There might be still some need for people who ask the right questions of like, what should we build? For a time being, but I would assume, like, personally, like if it's exponential, like at some point the AI will be capable at doing art the way humans can, and we'll be able to decide between you know, what is a good animation, what is a good design, and just be very good at this as well, and just catch up. So we will just become the consumer of it, and it will be a new life form, and, you know, see you later, goodbye. But it might not happen. Like it might be that there's like some growth limit to how big LLMs can be, and you're sort of seeing this with Fable. Like Fable is hugely expensive. It's great, but it just costs a lot of money, so you can't use it for everything. And if that cost doesn't come down, then we'll be stuck with it being a tool for us, and we'll still need engineers who don't code, but who will sort of still maybe review a few lines of code here and there, decide architectures, and at least be sort of product engineers who know what they want to build. So either way, I don't know. Yeah.
I have more product-related question than technical.
Sure.
What do you think makes Linear more popular product compared to the other competitors? Or maybe you recognize some specific point in time that boosted popularity?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple. Just build a product that people don't hate. Like when we, when we started Linear, we obviously had used Jira before, and we were talking with people who used Jira, and 90% of the time, like they said that they hated the tool, and we're like, oh, that's pretty aggressive. Like, really? You hate it? And they were like, oh shit, I hate it. So we're like, well, let's just build a product that people love, and if you can do that, yeah, and there you go. That's
research the market, right? I'm just playing devil advocate right now.
yeah. It's obviously, like, we had this idea of, like, let's build a modern application that is full of keyboard shortcuts, that looks like a sort of application that you actually use, not a web app, that is fast, has real-time synchronization, so you never have to refresh your web page, that has great design, great UX. And the idea, like, we didn't start Linear because we wanted to build a project management tool. That's kind of boring. Like, I don't want to be in that world. Like, we built Linear because we wanted to be an inspiration to builders, and make the industry as a whole better in some way, because we were heavy consumers of software ourselves. So we wanted to help, make people build better software. And what better way of, like, if you can build a beautiful project management tool that all the engineers need to use every day, they have no excuse to build anything worse.
They built Dark Mode. That's what one. It was Dark Mode. That was the thing.
That was the first thing that we shipped. Yeah.
It was for sure. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
All right. So we come from a world where we had 50 engineers working on this monster, and you got a split task, and then you just hit play and you watch it big. But now there's this thing emerging, and I don't know if it's interesting for you guys, because it's obviously a lot of money in this old world, where you have 1,000 projects running at the same time. Your mind is absolutely exploding.
Yeah.
I mean, hitting play is cool, but if you don't have this, you forget where it's going, where it started. Are you at all interested in the sort of entrepreneur that builds a fuck ton of startups as well? And
no, but we're sort of the antithesis to that world.
Yeah.
Like we've always cared about quality. Like, we're builders by heart. We want to make sure that everything works nicely. And we might be wrong, but we think that people are over-indexing on this AI trend currently. Like, everybody thinks, like, because you can build everything, you should. And I don't think that's true. Like, and I think there will be a reckoning maybe a year from now where everybody has built all this stuff. And even today, like, if you look at, like, the App Store has gotten, so many apps over time. Has the usage grown? No, the usage has stayed the same. So literally all this building and nothing has happened. So I don't think that people should be building everything they can. Like, they should still be thinking about, like, what do you want to actually do, and then use AI to build that. Like, we don't have AI agents running overnight to do stuff, because we need to be in the driver's seat, and we need to figure out, like, what we actually want to do and try it out and test it. So yeah, I do believe still in the craft of humankind.
Well, that answers his question.
Yeah.
Maybe focusing on quality then and on one product.
Yeah.
A bit the Apple vision.
Sure.
The question more on the business side of things, given that you guys are so heavily AI powered, like, how big of a challenge is it to stay profitable, given that Linear isn't that expensive? It's like $10 per seat or something.
Yeah.
And like, there is a lot of speculation that these big companies like Anthropic and OpenAI are heavily subsidizing the AI usage, and in reality it should have been much more expensive. Like, is it partially the case with Linear?
No. Well, obviously we're subsidizing. Like, we don't charge for this. AI is part of, usually the business plan. We have some things for the free plan as well, like even the code reviews. And we're very well aware of the pricing. So to cover all the questions that you asked, before AI, like, running Linear was super inexpensive. Probably 2-3% of the revenue went into hosting servers and all of this. So like 97% was gross profit for Linear. After AI, obviously that has dropped because tokens are costly, but we're still probably at like 92% gross profitability. So it has making a pretty big dent, and we don't like it, but we're like, well, let's front load this and now figure out like how we can monetize this. And again, we just launched last Thursday usage-based pricing. So if you do code, if you have your coding agent do things, like, we actually charge for that. And probably over time, more and more things will go into that. There will be some free layer for the agent, but if you go over that, you need to top up on tokens. So it's going fairly well. Like, it's a bit costly, but it's still fine. If it makes the product better, we're all for it, and we'll keep subsidizing it. When it
You just said 92%, so doing quick napkin math, that would be like around $1 per
Yeah.
whenever I'm building even a simple GPT wrapper, for it to be even barely profitable, I need to charge like $20, $30 per month a user to just stay afloat. And you got so many features like analyzing all of this like, code bases and finding all
Yeah.
the relevant,
So
information.
the business plan is $20 and enterprise plan is like $30. So there's increase in price in seeding when you get to the costly stuff. So we charge more for that, obviously. But I mean, I think like doing one of these guides is 10 cents currently, and we try to bring down that cost. And we've heavily invested in figuring out when we want to build these things. Like, if you come into your activity feed and you've never looked at a guide, we won't build it for you, and we won't build it in the background. Maybe in the future you can pay some money for us to always build these for you, but then you go to the guide and then it starts building, and then you have to wait for it. So there's heuristics in how we use AI and when we use that, but 10 cents per this, and I think we can still drive down the cost of that even further. And this is a pretty complicated task. But OpenAI, like the API usage, is not subsidized. Like, they make money, and they might be actually making a lot of money with that. So I don't think the API price will. I think there will be a price war if something like OpenAI already is sort of decreasing their pricing to compete against Claude or Anthropic, because Anthropic is now leading the game. So they have to do something, and there will be a nice price war, and Grok will join the game as well, and everybody will fight it out, and will again get some more free tokens. Yeah.
You partially answered this question, but I'm going to ask, and I'd like to hear an additional perspective. So the question is, what value do you see Linear providing by building all these features inside it? So for example, the workflow you can us through right now, for a dev who's using cloud code or whatever, you can pretty much do a lot of that straight from your computer.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not running code and they can do this. Which other pillars of value are you finding by running this inside Linear?
For engineers, there are certain aspects like automatic bug fixes is one. Like if you get a bug fix, like think about like how long it takes you to set up your environment, pull the code, look at the bug reports, look at where all this code is. Like, why not just kick off an agent to do that for you, and you've got a PR, and you're like, oh yeah, this fixed it. Awesome, I can verify it in the preview. So that's a great thing there as well. And over time, I think like what we want to do is like just bring more of these time-saving tools for you. I don't expect any engineer to be coding, at least now, in Linear. Like, that would be kind of silly, although people do it already. I don't know why, but if you have a huge list of issues, like there is a great temptation to just do Command A, assign to Linear, and it will just like take 30 things, try to produce a PR out of it. It's the convenience of getting to some result fast. And over time, if that result becomes better and better, that's the way you actually want to work in. Like, Linear is the context of like all inbound traffic from customer emails, from your support team, from your bug reports will flow into Linear, and hopefully there's a machine that will automatically sort of keep on building. So we're trying to make this into a machine that builds your product for you.
One last question, guys.
Yeah.
You guys, can I?
Yep.
You guys keep adding more and more features. Aren't you afraid to become Jira at some point?
Nope. We are very well aware of that. And it's always been like, we've always thought about like not adding silly things. And again, we've removed things in here as well. Like, if it becomes obsolete, we take it away. It's going to be hard, obviously, to retain the core of the product to be simple when you add more and more functionality. But we're well aware of like not becoming a big bloated monster.
How will you make sure that you don't bloat, and basically you have different teams building things? How do you make sure that you stay centered and doesn't blow?
We use Linear for that, obviously. It has. We've got initiatives, projects like, it's so many times I have to say in an internal meeting, like, I wish we had just a project management tool that would take care of these for us. But yes, so we do all the work in Linear, and that gives you the context of what people are building. Thanks so much. Thank you.